Have a question for you. Taking Animus out of the equation.
Oh, he's straight out of it.
Out of the equation.
Oh, Joe Animus, he's
That's
completely out of this equation.
I think Kenny and the Young Bucks are different in this manner, or in this respect. I'd like to know what you think. If right now, the way things are going with AEW, the trajectory they're on, the talent that's there, the numbers that they're getting each and every week, which have been somewhat steady in that range, and the shows all doing good, the live shows all selling out and doing really good with tickets. Not all, but the big shows are selling out and doing really well with ticket sales. Do you think it would hurt AEW if they didn't have the Young Bucks? I could see it hurting them not having Kenny right now. But if the Young Bucks weren't on these shows, would it actually affect AEW's bottom line in a negative way?
No, because if everything else was still the same, the people that like, the same people that like the Young Bucks, like Olivier, and like that whole genre, Pockets, the whole 9 yards. So if all the rest of their comedy favorites were still on the program, no, they wouldn't set the seats on fire if the Young Bucks weren't there. But I thought, this is the question I thought you were going to ask, and this may be even more interesting. What's going to happen when all of a sudden the top talent in the company, both from a television rating standpoint, from an in-ring standpoint, from a money-drawing standpoint, is no longer the EVPs? Does anybody seriously, is anybody out there besides the worst of the converts, the Kool-Aid drinkers, is anybody going to say that Kenny Olivier is a bigger star than CM Punk or Bryan Danielson? Or is anybody going to say that, my God, that the Young Bucks would be major talents to be slotted at a level competitive with or farther up than CM Punk or Bryan Danielson or Bray Wyatt or whatever role Ric Flair ends up in? It's not going to be wrestling. I'm just talking about wrestling talent. When AEW picks up enough top talent from the WWE that these guys no longer stand up, what's going to happen then? They're still in control of the booking. They're still in control of Tony Khan, who, does anything that anybody asks him to do because he has no balls. Then are they going to start burying guys that they've paid millions of dollars for, or not featuring to their fullest guys they paid millions of dollars for because of their belief that they still should be presented as bigger stars than a CM Punk or Bryan Danielson or Bray Wyatt or fucking Adam Cole or blah, 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 or whoever in the future? That could be interesting, because at some point, what if they, this is fantasy because it's different time eras, but what about if they had Steve Austin and The Rock in their prime and they somehow managed to sign them, but there is the EVPs that are still, they'd be good for a small territory. Kansas City, they'd be on top, but we're talking the biggest stars in wrestling, and they're still going to be presented at that level or above it. That's going to be interesting. If they are able to assemble enough of a big star roster from the WWE that a lot of people, not just in their bubble, know who these guys are, like they started with Jericho, and then he shit the bed all over himself, that's going to be interesting.
But looking at all the shows in Queens and Chicago, everything, I was thinking about it the other day because I think you could say the same thing about Cody. I think Omega matters more to those fans right now than the Bucks or Cody. And I think you could start looking at it like, if you took Cody out of it, doesn't hurt AEW. The fans will still go to the shows and react the same. The Bucks, it's more of a question, but I still don't think it would hurt AEW.
No, they would. It might. The fucking fans were booing every time Cody punched old Malachi Jones in the face the other night. So I don't know if it might help AEW if Cody was gone right now. But no, nobody would set the seats on fire as long as they're seeing the concept. It's like ECW. Guys came and went. sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. But as long as it was ECW, the people that were drinking Paul's Kool-Aid were, it's still ECW. It's still AEW. It's still the show where we can laugh and joke and everybody will do all these cool spots and nothing is supposed to look real and nobody cares and it doesn't make any difference. So just one or two of the inmates climbing the wall of the asylum doesn't mean they're going to, close the whole thing down.
Well, Jim, maybe one of these executive vice presidents in the future will see that they've lost their position, will think they've been cheated, and will look to finally sue.
Well, if they do, then I know who they could call, or more importantly, if they do lose their position and they need to get booked on a future event in Beckley, West Virginia for All-Star Wrestling, I can tell you who also sponsors that event coming up this weekend, August 7th, the Bash in Beckley, none other than...
Call Stephen P. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. Still to the rest.
But now that I think about it, if it's the Hardley Boys or some of their ilk that have lost their position, they shouldn't call All-Star Wrestling or Stephen P. New to get booked in Beckley because there's a law in West Virginia. You can't wrestle professionally unless you're over the age of 18 and you got to be this tall to ride the ride. But otherwise, folks, if you have legal difficulties, the man that stands head and shoulders above the rest, the man that is tall enough to see over the mountaintop and to the promised land of legal repercussions that he will get you out of, and he will deliver to you your compensation forthwith and aforesaid, and with all of those legalese words thrown in, the man to call, Stephen P. New, newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. Whether your groundwater has been poisoned, whether you've been assaulted by people and doctors and staff at the Veterans Administration Hospital, the CPAP machine, the Philips CPAP machine that Stacy had to quit using and that other people have written and told us that they were aware of now because of our spots, the Philips CPAP machine that is degenerating and spreading out cancerous causing agents, all these things that can hurt you don't even know is going on, and more. The law office of Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084. He's handled so many cases for so many members of the cult of Cornette and still is over the last few years. And also, remember, this Saturday night, August the 7th, the Bash in Beckley at the Raleigh County Convention Center, All-Star Wrestling, the big sponsor, New Law Office, and our friend Stephen P. New. He's one of us.
That's right, a great man, Stephen P. New.